You know you need to leave, not as a vague feeling, not as a passing thought, as a quiet, persistent, undeniable knowing that has been living in you for longer than you would like to admit. And yet, you're still there. Not because you can't leave, not because there is nowhere to go, but because every time you get close to the door, something pulls you back. Something that sounds like loyalty, something that sounds like responsibility, something that sounds like, but I helped build this. My name is Hannah Oller. I work at the intersection of identity, life transitions, and becoming. And today I want to go deep on the most painful room in the 4 rooms framework. Room 2, the locked door, and the 3 specific reasons you are still standing at it. Last week, I introduced the 4 rooms, a framework for the specific experience of outgrowing what you helped build. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it below. It's worth watching first. But today, I want to go somewhere deeper. Room 2 is where most people are. Not still inside the room they built. They've already outgrown that. And not yet in the corridor. They haven't moved through the door. They are standing at the threshold, hand on the handle, knowing and not yet moving. I call this the locked door, and it is not locked from the outside. It is locked from within. There are 3 reasons people stay at the locked door. I call them the 3 lies. Not because the people who hold them are dishonest, but because each one feels like truth while quietly keeping you small. The first is the investment illusion. The investment illusion is the belief that leaving means the investment was wasted. That if you go, everything you gave meant nothing. The years, the energy, the sleepless nights and early mornings, and the moments you chose this room over everything else that was asking for your attention. If you leave, what was it all for? This is one of the most powerful traps the human mind constructs. Economists call it the sunk cost fallacy. The tendency to continue something based on what has already been invested rather than on what is actually best going forward. But when it is your identity, your relationships, your best years, it does not feel like a logical fallacy. It feels like loyalty. It feels like honoring what you gave. Here is what I need you to understand. The investment did not stay in the room. You carried it with you in every skill developed, every lesson learned, every capacity earned, every scar that taught you something you could not have learned any other way. The investment was never in the room. It was in you, and you take yourself with you when you walk through that door. The room stays, but the builder carries everything forward. The second lie is identity fusion. If you watched last week's video on identity, you will recognize this territory. Identity fusion is what happens when your sense of self becomes so fused with the room you inhabit that leaving it stops feeling like a professional decision and starts feeling like self-amputation. You don't just work there, you are the person who built that thing. The role has become the identity. The contribution became the self-concept, And somewhere in the years of building, you stopped being able to answer the question of who you are without referencing where you are. I have lived this. I have been in rooms where I was so invested, so visible, so defined by what I contributed that leaving felt less like moving on and more like losing a version of myself I wasn't sure I could find elsewhere. What I know now is this: the room did not make me. I made the room. The gifts I brought to it, the vision I carried within it, the capacity I developed inside it, none of that belonged to the institution. It belonged to me. And I carried all of it when I finally walked through the door. Separating self from room is the specific work of the locked door. It requires you to ask a question most people have never genuinely sat with. What did I bring to this room that existed before I entered it? Not what the room gave you, not what the role required, what was already present in you before the title, before the badge, before the institution had a name for what you were. That answer is the beginning of the reclamation. The third lie is the most culturally embedded, the most difficult to challenge. And in my experience, the one that keeps gifted people small longer than any other. I call it the loyalty lie. The loyalty lie is the cultural narrative that staying is noble and leaving is betrayal. That commitment means endurance. That the measure of your dedication is how long you remain. We absorb this narrative early from organizations that reward tenure over contribution, from communities that treat departure as disloyalty, from systems that need you to stay more than they need you to flourish. And so we stay past the point of growth, past the point of health, past the point where what we are giving bears no relationship to what we are receiving. And we call it loyalty. And we call it commitment. And we call it being a good person. I want to offer a different definition. Loyalty is a virtue. Loyalty to people who have earned it, to values you genuinely hold, to commitments you have freely made. That is a virtue worth honoring. But loyalty to a room that is slowly erasing you, loyalty to an institution that has stopped deserving what you are giving it, loyalty that requires you to make yourself smaller with every passing year, that is not a virtue. That is a cost. And it is one you were never meant to pay. You were not built for loyal self-erasure. You were built for something that could actually hold who you are. 3 lies: the investment illusion, identity fusion, the loyalty lie. If you are standing at the locked door right now, I want to say something to you directly. You are not weak for finding it hard. You are not disloyal for outgrowing something you gave yourself to. And you are not leaving empty-handed. The door is not locked from the outside. It never was. It was locked by stories about investment, about identity, about loyalty that were never fully true. And on the other side of that door is not emptiness, it is the corridor, the in between. And the corridor, as disorienting as it is where the real becoming begins. We will talk about the corridor next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And drop a comment. Which of the three lies has kept you at your door the longest? I read every single one. My name is Hannah Ola. The door is not locked. It is waiting for you to stop believing the stories that told you it was.